Right, so that's Meghan's show again, I guess. Episode 4 of Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, done and dusted.
I think this one was a little bit more Meghan and Meghan, featuring Harry.
Yeah, this one didn't have any explosive elements as far as I was concerned. It was just extremely self-serving.
Yeah.
And a
What would
lot
you
of
say?
gone.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think was the most sort of, at least initially? I mean, we can go through it like as it happened. What popped out to you the most? Would you say?
Just again the contradictions and also again the comparisons to Diana.
Yeah.
Were very blatant this time. But it's just full of contradictions. There's loads of stuff that she says in this that's contradicted what she said in previous episodes. There's quite a few things that popped out as well in regards to what friends were saying and things like that, and it's just all a bit ridiculous.
Well, I'm not sure about you, right? But I mean, one thing that stuck out to me is one of her friends, amongst all of the fake tears, which I didn't even see any tears at all of note, which seems to be quite a common theme with both Meghan and her circle that she seems to hold so dearly, is one of the people who was saying how devastated they were. I think this is a lady that said that they signed off every one of their messages with "Love wins, love wins." Oh my goodness, could you imagine anything so? Oh goodness me, I don't know if I could. Yeah,
No, I can't imagine
no,
anything like
no,
that.
no. So, but this is the
Especially
thing. So,
text, right?
say
Can you
again,
imagine?
sorry.
Oh, every single text. So can you imagine? Oh, I've had a horrible day. Love wins.
Well, call me a cold British person who doesn't even know how to hug people, right? But I sometimes even don't bother with putting an X on the end of it, right, for a kiss, and then sometimes maybe I feel guilty about that. But no, I don't think I could quite go quite as far as to say love wins. That just screams fake. And the reason I brought that up initially is because the lady who said this, that's how they sign the messages off. Oh, we need to help Meghan. We need to protect Meghan. Oh, it seems to be again a common theme. Maybe that's why she chooses certain people. It's like, oh, well, one of my friends who happens to be the editor at the time of People magazine. It's like, him. Okay. So, yeah, we've all been there, haven't we? We've all been there.
Yeah,
We've all
we've
been
all had friends that just so happen to be editors of,
People.
worldwide renowned magazines. We've all been there. It's a struggle.
Well, I'm quite sort of curious actually. So she happens to have one of her friends who was an editor of People magazine, and still didn't know who Prince Harry was. There, I mean, that's quite strange, isn't it? It's
Very.
all rather strange. Well, so to move to it with some level of a sort of a systematic thing. Obviously, like we said before, it's going to start out with the wedding, isn't it? It's going to all start out with the wedding, which you predicted last time we spoke about it. It's going to go down that route. So, and it did, predictably so. I have to admit, and I will say this, and it's probably going to be the last grace that I'm going to show towards the situation. There's, I thought, okay, if they were going to talk about how they felt about each other and about the day and about the wedding and about things like that, I could almost find that sort of quite charming and quite sweet because it's relatable and it's stuff that people who've been married before have potentially been through. Something I would have quite been interested in, like their take on things. If they'd have put that in the central focus of the whole thing, they could have again come across well. I think there was redeemable positions that they could have taken, except it wasn't that. It was a weapon to wield in order to achieve the attack that inevitably came rather quickly.
But again, I think they've achieved a contradiction of sorts because the previous 3 episodes were all about like how bad the press were, how everybody treated bad, how racist Britain was, etc., etc. But even they had to provide positive news articles around the wedding because there were many, there were hundreds even, and hundreds of thousands of people of all backgrounds, of all cultures, of all colours came to watch them on the streets.
Yeah.
So
The
that's a
streets.
contradiction in itself. You can't say that Britain's is a racist institution, and then have all these people come out and watch. And can I just say that people of colour weren't at that wedding because of Meghan. I'm sure that there was an element of that to it. However, we've all seen Kate and William's wedding. We've all saw the Queen's funeral. There were many people of different backgrounds, different colours, different creeds that went to see them. There were many people of colour that loved the royal family.
Yeah, in her own words, and this again as we in reference to what he's mentioned previously regarding the contradictions. In her own words, she released a book that was 12. She pointed out explicitly that there were 12 people from all sorts of different places, 12 different places. I'm not entirely sure why you would look with such a specific number. She released a cookbook around and saying that how celebrated the diversity of London should be, and that's again it's that's totally antithetical to the concept that this country is what it is. If she's going to sort of make those observations, that totally flies in the face of what her claims are.
Exactly, the whole thing again, full of contradictions. She said as well when she was on the train with the Queen, it was like speaking to her grandma, and the Queen was her grandmother figure. And then when they stepped off the Queen, it was like, okay, showtime. And then when they stepped off the train. But in the previous episode, she said that the formalities carry on behind closed doors, which is why she had to curtsy. So it's like, well, which one is it? Do the formalities carry on, or is it different behind closed doors and more relaxed? Because it can't be
Yeah.
both.
No, it really can't be. And again, regards to the family that was present, and the only family of the two that they had there was Prince Harry's, was the royal family, and she's quite happy to you know throw under the bus, so to speak, or throw under the carriage if you want to make it more of a royal reference. She's okay to sort of do that with, but they were all present, not just present, but totally committed to and on board with. Like, Prince William wore the uniform with his brother, totally celebrating the occasion, and everything that she, even her by her own admittance, uh, all of what King Charles did, or I suppose Prince Charles at the time, but King Charles now did, was went above and beyond. He walked her down the aisle. She claims that was, something she asked him to do, when it seems to be a bit contradictory to what the actual released story was, in that he offered her to do that.
Yeah.
Which backs up what he did in his actions. And his actions were that he helped to source the choir for Harry's choice of song, for her walking down the aisle, and also for her choice of music, for the gospel choir, which was absolutely loved. It was, it was seen as like, oh, it was a lovely thing. I mean, there's a chap on there. Again, he seems like an ideologue. What, make of that what you will. Looks to Oprah, looks to Idris Elba. They all had a chuckle. They know the symbolism of all of this. Well, what? No, well, could you explain the symbolism rather than just allude to what it is? Because the person who was instrumental in sourcing the incredible singers that were, performing that piece was King Charles, which she admitted.
Well, again, it's the contradiction. So the last episode was all about, again, a racist royal family, Commonwealth, and yet here's Prince Charles supporting every step of the way. It almost feels to me, because they didn't mind trashing William a couple of times, but it almost seems to me that, like, everything they say about Prince Charles is good. She said he was a wonderful man, etc. It's almost like, they're gonna say all this stuff, but please let us keep our titles still.
Yeah, yeah. That could have been something interesting. Even though, again, she's mocking. I mean, she said, "Oh, we cut the cake with a sword." And look, right, okay, you could sort of make some arguments with an element of humor, like, "Oh, yeah, it is a bit silly and frivolous," but not off the back of the backlash she's received regarding the curtsy, which again does not fold in with what you mentioned previously about knowing the formalities behind the scenes, but then not knowing them as well. It's
Yeah,
just all
it's
whatever
just all,
fits.
all too much contradiction. It really is. This
Yeah.
has been them throughout every interview they've ever given. It's contradictory. And you can
Yes.
pick holes in it, you can do the comparisons. And again, there were a lot of comparisons in this. Oh, well, look how, well the press treated Case. Look how badly they treated Meghan. Like, one of my favourite ones was when someone was saying, oh, well, Kate wore this dress and then Meghan wore this dress in the same dress. Like, well, they're completely different dresses, actually. Completely different. But, the other comparisons with the avocado, the other comparisons with the baby bump photo. But yeah, Kate didn't get bad press about that. Meghan did. But we've proven over and over again in the 4 videos that we've done, in shorts that we've done, that Kate got bad press.
Not just bad, not just bad press. It was bad paparazzi, which is a lot, which is exactly what Harry's issue seems to be, predominantly about the paparazzi, right? Meghan's just never received it. The only footage we've seen by herself of any paparazzi she's received was when the engagement was announced, and it was her in a distance. There was no photographers close by. There was nothing. There was none of
But
that.
who else had bad press?
Hmm.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Prince
If
Philip, the Queen, Diana, literally everybody. And I'm not saying this to say, what they said on the documentary, which is like, oh, well, just because it's the same doesn't mean it should be overlooked, and it shouldn't. But I'm saying this because she's not singled out. And on that documentary, they're trying to make out that everybody else is golden, and she is the only one with bad. Not the case.
no,
Not the case at all. Every single person in this country, she's not unique in that aspect.
no. I mean, to sort of move it on slightly in terms of what press she has received, when she did receive positive press, which predominantly it does seem to be the way it was, is when she obviously went to the Australia tour. And this was during the time when, things were, very, very, very positively received, which was the majority of the time, at least in the interim, in the initial period. She got back and she did an incredible. So it was Australia, wasn't it, that they went to? Again,
Yeah, it's
parallel, trying
Australia,
to.
South Africa, and then she did that Royal Walk Up with the Queen, where she got very
Yeah,
good. And again, it was the same with Kate. She got good press, she got bad press,
yeah,
because it's an absolute roller coaster. But to try and say that William and Kate feel threatened by that, I mean, that was a lot of news articles at the time
well,
as well, just stirring up trouble. But notoriously, when people in the royal family are in favour, the palace wants that. They want
yeah,
That's why they wanted Prince Charles and Diana to stay together.
of
Um,
course.
and previously in the other episodes, you said it was all bad, and here we are now with a lot of favourable press, a lot of good press. So again, it's the contradictory.
The thing is, what makes the royal family function, if you want to call it the firm, in terms of their relationship with the media, which of course is a huge deal, is that they need to be seen as stable, they need to be seen as strong, they need to be seen as unified, they need to be seen as popular. Their
Yeah,
whole entire position is based on popularity. They are not going to pass up a popular royal for anything. It's
no,
not going to be the case. So it just totally flies in the face again of what the claims are. If she's a popular royal, which again she was initially. I wouldn't say. I mean, they're making it out as if she was the second coming, which I think is way too far. It wasn't certainly anywhere near that, considering this is the country that they're talking about here. She was certainly popular, but not like, wow, this is somebody who's going to I don't know, change the world. It was certainly nothing like
mm,
that. This is very grandiose of her to assume so. And the reason I mention the Australia thing is when she did get back from that trip, apparently like everything changed again. This whole documentary is all like, and then everything changed, and then everything changed. But then you say everything changed, and they go back to something from the past. The dates are so jumbled. They're trying to weave one continuous narrative, and yet all the time the dates seem very jumbled. So, but they got back to the palace. Everything was set up. You know, even the documentary had this nice picture of like the palace with the colours and things like that. Don't know what in earth they were trying to imply with that. There's obviously some purpose behind the filmmakers' ideas. So he got back in, and she was on the front of the Telegraph, which was basically it still is the most pro-royal newspaper you're ever going to do. If anybody in any press office throughout the entire firm, which I think they've muddied that term actually. I think it had a little bit of like a professionalism before, with like a bit of gusto, like a bit of the Queen's gusto before. Now it's just turned into some sort of like something that's sullied. But they've, they had the whole, that everyone would have been totally, anybody who would have been anything worth a salt would have probably been closest to the Telegraph, because it is an incredibly royalist newspaper. For her to be able to be featured on the front cover, right? Even though they say, "Oh, all the palace make the decisions with the press," well, then how was she featured on the front cover?
Exactly. Again, it's the contradiction of it. Which way is it? Is it one way or is it the other way?
Yeah,
And it's just what you just said with like muddying the timelines and things like that. It's like one of the pictures they showed when they were talking about Meghan being sad was a picture of Meghan from the Queen's funeral. But they're talking about the point in time that was 4 years ago. And
yeah,
yes, so one of the videos we did on TikTok, people were like, oh, well, people in documentaries use stock footage, etc., etc. But the whole thing about this was our story, our truth. So you would think that in the documentary photos, they would try and get them as spot on as possible to make them seem as credible as possible. Hasn't
yeah.
happened.
Yeah, you'd want everything to be absolutely above board. And this is the funny thing. And I've noticed quite a lot of the backlash from last week's episodes, of the series, docu-series, if you want to call it that. It doesn't seem to it doesn't seem to paint anything like neutral at all. Now, I think a documentary should just document something. Now, you can have an angle, you can certainly have biases, definitely. But to be infallible, she could have easily redeemed, at least for 5 seconds, say, maybe I was a little bit this. And that there was an attempt at it, sort of like a half effort, I guess you could describe it as, to be charitable, to sort of say, oh, we maybe we weren't that great. Maybe we could have done a little bit more of this or more of that, but they're completely the victims. And when you're hearing that they're completely the victims against them, saying, "Oh, you see a palace and it's Nottingham College, Nottingham Cottage in Kensington Palace," saying, "Oh, you see a palace, you expect it to be a lovely palace, but we just had this little flat in there." It's very clear that's so grand to sort of have those two juxtaposed against each other. Oh, well, I'm sorry that you had to live in a palace because it wasn't as good as a palace you thought it would be. Very difficult to
I
feel
know that's
sympathy.
it was the thing is it was still on palace grounds, and they still had all of that, acres and acres to roam around in. And I'm sure it wasn't small. They didn't specify how many rooms. They just said, "Oh, it's small rooms." But like, so what? It's still a free house, and that's where you can't really get on board with them.
Mm,
The same with the baby shower. They were saying, "Oh, something that was lovely and done by my friends was turned into this thing about lavishness and money."
well, you know
But it wasn't
something,
paid
right?
for by the taxpayers.
What I
But
was going to
the
say,
people that
yeah.
they did on the voiceovers with them was all American news saying how bad it was.
Yeah, that's the thing, wasn't it? Like it was all the sort of saying like, "Oh, it was so bad. Like, how dare they come over to the States?" Well, they were all American journalists that they used in that. So couldn't they? if they could find something to fit the narrative, then they would have used it. Absolutely, they had to literally sift through everything. And the thing is, you know something, if that's what she wanted to do, that's fine. And I wasn't necessarily against the whole idea, but to sort of say, well, that's not going to potentially get caught some bad press is a little bit ridiculous, actually. Harry saying that he wants to protect her from bad press is very, very grandiose, because you cannot be exposed to the media and expect to control the media. That's very bizarre. And in terms of, I don't know if I would necessarily think like, maybe this isn't going to get me some attention. I'm going to fly out with the, you know, the firstborn of Prince Harry, who everyone knows except Meghan, including the family. Everyone in her family knows except her, right? She's carrying his firstborn son, flying over to the States, making a scene out of the situation. Again, I think it's lovely to have a mother celebrating a bump. And I will say this myself, and I'm sure it's probably similar from everybody else. You see someone with a bump, especially if it's someone that you're related to or family or friends, and it is instinctual to me to go, oh, you know, have to, you know, to sort of have a little rub and a feel and things like that, because it's like, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, right? And sharing it with friends, I think, is a lovely thing. But to go out and to sort of go to a party, you know, in central New York, you know, at the height of the fame that you're in, to spend a party with Serena Williams, right? And the editor of People magazine. I don't think you should just expect that not to be, you know, not to be treated with absolute reverence. It just screams delusion, you know, and it seems like it
Well, yeah,
only
it's not
suits.
very subtle, is it?
No, no,
Very subtle.
rather garish actually.
Yeah, yeah. So again, it doesn't fit with their sort of privacy remit, does it? Oh, we want to be private. Well, we're going to a baby shower on Fifth Avenue with Serena Williams and the editor of People magazine. I'm sure the editor of People magazine won't have anything to say about it in their magazine. Just get a grip, get an absolute grip.
Yeah.
So again, like this episode is what we expected, I think. All contradictory, all self-serving.
I do
What?
want to ask a question before you go.
Yeah.
Is an avocado a fruit?
I don't know. Is it French?
Oh goodness me, right. I can speak French. Would you like a croissant with your avocado fruit? Okay, well let's shall we have a look at what's going on with the next one.
Yeah, let's go give it a watch and we'll be back with our review of episode 5.